when I had heard about the actual system before I actually looked at the book, I thought it sounded like everything I don't like about Fate multiplied by 10 and take out all the stuff I do like about it. It's actually not at all what I expected. I mean, it's somewhat what I expected, but it's executed much better than I was anticipating.
I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I did also. I would gladly run this again. I think the system is exactly the right. It feels like the right amount of crunch for me, and also the weirdness built into the system really resonates with me.
It's interesting
Caters
because
to your White Wolf thing.
It actually
It really does.
It feels like it's simpler,
Yeah.
but then when you start doing the back and forth math, it's not that simple, you know. But but just enough.
And I think that the thing that was immediately off-putting to me that proved to be wrong was that the dice mechanics are simple in the extreme. I read a lot of reviews for this game before I got my hands on any of the actual materials, and none of them hammered home that when you decide on a character, you make your something guy who does something sentence. None of them hammered home the fact that those were all game traits that existed. They all made it sound very much like, other than your type, you were basically picking things, like Fate aspects.
Sure.
And I just thought that sounded like your character was just like a poof of smoke. And I'm not going to deny it. I like a little bit of crunch in there, and I was afraid that there was going to be almost none.
I like how you can put the stuff together.
Yeah.
I randomly came up with something that's pretty cool.
Well, I mean, I feel like there seems to be, like, the descriptors are pretty light, pretty general. The list isn't very long. The types, the list is very short, but they basically try to encompass most of what you want to get out of most types of characters. And then the foci are, they're kind of, I think, where the money's at.
And you get a lot of bang for your buck, and also I think they add this flair to your characters that's really interesting.
They add a lot less stuff overall time than your type does, but they basically add like your one really cool thing that nobody else in your class has, kind of.
In that way, and also with how relatively simple I think it would be to make them, it reminds me of Jeff's homebrew White Wolf thing where we got to make up powers. Like, that's what it seems like. Like, oh, you have this guy, but then you also have this thing on top of it that makes you unique and cool.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I despise the fact that the player characters do all of the dice rolling and the GM does none.
I actually like it a lot. It really frees me up.
I don't dislike the way it works in practice. I just don't like that as a mechanic in principle.
I could roll dice, but I didn't want to.
You almost did. I thought you.
I almost
like
did.
You were going to.
And then I remembered I shouldn't.
Like, wait a minute. I don't play this like other games.
It's actually really interesting because it really frees me up to look at stuff. Like, I don't know the bestiary very well. So I was sort of looking at the stuff that I had browsed before to try to find appropriate encounters and things.
I don't know if this is true, but maybe the discomfort you're getting at is that when a game so openly works differently for the same thing based on whether you're a player or not, it makes it feel like it is just eschewed simulation entirely.
It's very much the same displeasure that I had with 4th edition versus 3rd edition D&D writ large. Like, the fact that behind the curtain in 4th edition, the monsters were basically a series of tables that you cross-reference with the player's level, and you make slight adjustments based on various factors. Only in this, it just takes the one factor. Maybe two, if you count enemies with armor.
The only thing I didn't like
pretty
about
much their only characteristics is they have, like, their level, which is all of their numbers, and then this one other number maybe they have.
There are some things, like some special abilities that monsters have that change their things, like some things defend at a higher number or attack at a lower number than their level, and also monsters have special abilities and that sort of thing. But yeah, I see what you mean. And that was really weird to me at first. I was like, oh, their level just determines everything. And also, it took me a while to really get a handle on it. Like, like the first monster that you fought was level 3. The bandits were 2. And even to you guys, to tier 1 characters, like, a couple of 2s is kind of a pushover.
Right.
And, like, those 2 guys were 4s, and 4s are strong for tier 1 characters. And, it's like, I can see how they mean, like a 4 is a pretty good, and they never really talk about, like, what's appropriate. You know, they're just like, we'll use it if it seems appropriate, you know? And it is difficult to figure out like what works. They mention in the book that when something is difficulty 21, like difficulty 7, the tier 4 characters can make a difficulty 7 a 0 pretty regularly. Like if a tier 4 character is specialized in something and has two assets, they only need to spend 3 effort to get that done, to get a level or something that they literally cannot roll on a d20 down to 0 and not have to roll at all. And what they mention is that will happen several times a session.
Yeah, and
these characters can turn a 30 into a 0, no problem.
And I felt both a little pleased and a little twinkish that I can't be hit by a level 2 enemy unless
I think that's awesome.
Juice, because it was like I should take the thrust, but then I was like, you know what? If I just don't wear armor, then I will have super high trained defense, and what's more, at tier 2 of the guy who fights with panache gets an ability that is in effect an asset to speed defense for parrying blows. So it'll be like I will automatically reduce every defensive challenge by 3 difficulty levels.
And one thing that seemed really interesting to me is that they all the abilities that you get in the game, they like most of them feel really powerful, even if you're not necessarily using them. Like an asset is strong, a skill is strong, and it like they're all strong in their own way.
Sure.
And then like there's this whole other thing because ciphers are supposed to be a very much like use it and move through constant influx thing, and those feel more like a flexible character or a flexible player ability than they do like items. Like they're player abilities that you just mow through them. That's so cool to me.
Kind of the idea I had for what nanos were supposed to be. It's like their abilities are like wizard abilities, basically, like zapping things. But they don't really get that many, at least not more than the other types get in terms of abilities. But they're a little more versatile and a little more versed in artifacts and ciphers, which kind of gives them like a spell book sort of like, as long as you keep a decent trickle of ciphers, at least you'll just have like a couple of tricks to whip out in an emergency, or maybe a rocket launcher to save for the harder fight that you know is coming later.
Yeah.
The thing I wanted to mention earlier that kind of bothers me about their system is I don't like being responsible for both the random roll to hit something and the random roll to defend against something.
Yeah.
It feels like that's a lot of responsibility for somebody that feels like they always have bad luck.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah, you know, I mean, if you have bad luck, then the GM is going to roll good to hit you.
I do roll good to hit Richard.
I don't know, I
know that it can be spun either way. I'm just saying, I don't like, at least if the GM does it, it wasn't me that did it. You know what I mean? And it's like, my fault, or not my fault, but my bad luck made me miss the attack, but it was his good luck that hit me, and not my, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Sounds a little bit like semantics to me, but I get what you mean.
I'm just saying it feels like a lot of responsibility, you know, like...
I know what you mean.
I like the responsibility idea, but at the same time, I'm on the other end of that.
My objection to the players rolling all the dice is that it almost feels like it is trying to distance itself from being a role-playing game at that point. Like, it's not that it isn't everything that a role-playing game should be, it's just that is a system that doesn't feel like it belongs.
Oh, you know why, too? Because it makes it feel like you could play it almost GM-less. You know what I mean? Like, here's the stats, you know?
They say repeatedly in the book, and I like this, they say that the job of the GM mostly, like the thing that they do more often than anything else, is setting difficulty tasks.
Yeah.
Like that's what the GM does. And they when the players decide to do something, the GM decides what opposes them. And like that's, I think, you know, like this is a game where you need that. Like it's very much a game of discovery and that sort of thing, and you need to have a like for me it was liberating to not have to make the rolls. Like I can say a DC and then I can help you through the numbers, but I got good enough at helping through the numbers that I could do that automatically while I'm doing something else. Like I could be, like for me where I like to make a lot of things up, it's especially, like it's as liberating as Fate is, except that it has that thing that I like to reference where it's easier to work inside of, it's sometimes easier to work inside of a box, like where I have limits or rules. And it feels like that, where I have a little bit of the limits and rules that I have in like a D20 game, but I have some or a lot of the freedom that I have in Fate without having to make any of the rolls. It frees me up to look at all the things that I need to look at. And there are things I need to look at in this. I don't understand everything.
It's an old school way of thinking, but it's like if the GM wants to attack me, then they need to earn it. You know what I mean? And they want to attack me, now go and see if you get hit. You know, it's like...
Yeah.
I think that's kind of cool. I like the idea. It really buys into the idea that the fun for the GM is in planning and in creating something for the players, and the fun for the players, a lot of players is rolling dice.
You've mentioned basically the definite pro to it. Also, I've never seen it done like that before.
No, I've never seen a system where
I haven't played as many games as you have, but I've never seen a game where the players are randomly in charge of everything that they do, or whatever they want to do. And I think that's clever, and I think it's interesting.
There's a really super indie RPG called Lacuna, which I read a long time ago.
Someone mentioned that on Reddit.
Yeah, it might have been me. It is like that in that it's more frustrating to me than that, because it's like you're rolling dice to do things, and how well you do is kind of like it determines how much stress is put upon you, and you have a limit to how much you can take before you basically have to stop doing whatever you're doing. It would go into a lot of particulars to explain exactly what I mean, but the basic idea is that the actual actions you're taking are almost abstract, and the consequence is really what you're rolling on yourself. And it really made me bonkers. I kind of wanted to run it for a while, because it's sort of like one of those things where you like run like a very limited engagement. It's not really an ongoing campaign, in my opinion.
Paranoia.
Paranoia?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Paranoia is
like a one-shot.
Well, I guess, yeah, that's basically what I was saying, was like, it would be fun to do for a limited engagement maybe sometime, but it's, that mechanic I didn't really like, and it was just kind of, I felt a little bit of that in this, where it's like, it's not so much that what you're doing doesn't feel literal when you're rolling to hit and then you're rolling to defend. It just sort of feels like, I think I'm thinking of it like a board game mechanic, like when you play Arkham Horror and you do all of the fighting against an automated numerological system.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand it's more than that because we're playing a role-playing game while we do it. And so we don't have to worry about board game mechanics or role-playing game mechanics, but for the grace of God. They're the same.
No, I think the reaction's very natural. It puts it all in your face. Like, in most other games, I understand not all, the way in which a player does something is the same process in which a monster or an NPC does it. And when the game says, nope, when it's reversed, it's going to work totally different, then that is just like shoving in your face that that's game mechanics. These are not quote-unquote physics by which the world works. This is a game.
Yeah. And I think what you said earlier rings true, that it's kind of like they are flaunting that it is not a simulation in any real way. It's not that they're trying to rub your face in it, they're just letting their freak flag fly at this point.
The thing that kind of reminds me of Fate is how every task that you want to accomplish, whether it's a skill check to attack, defend, or otherwise, you get to look at the wall before you kind of scale it, because like Lee would say, the same way that we would do it with Fate, he'd be like, you're looking for a 2, or you're looking for a 3, and now it's like you get to do quick math and then determine
and that's even
how many tools you want to bring to this.
That's even more important in this system than in Fate, where in this system it's assumed that all of your expenditures are going to happen ahead of time.
Right. Well, that's the thing is with Fate, you can put a Band-Aid on it, and
like, there's no Band-Aids in it.
Because I'm the best at what I do, and then boom, I can do it,
Right.
But in this game, it's like no takesies, backsies. You put all of the cards that you're willing to play with on the table. And
that leads to that infuriating thing where you're like, I better spend an effort on this, and then you roll a 17.
Yeah,
exactly. Like, oh, okay, well, I didn't need to, but I did, and I'm just going to rationalize it by saying, well, I tried my best.
Well, I really liked it. I think the system is good. I know it works both ways. If I roll, for both sides of the coin, I know that it's just as easy for the DM to get good rolls. It was just tough for me, particularly because the video can show.
It's definitely a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I think I have another affliction that was kind of prominent in 4th edition, which is the way the different the way the foci and descriptors are set up. It makes me want to play a larger array of different new characters instead of following this one through years and years of adventure. I really want to try a completely different thing, combining these parts.
Yeah, I would do some tweaks if I kept this character.
Well, I'm not saying I would with this character. I'm just saying, like, I think it would be so rad to play like a whatever glaive who
a strong glaive who murders.
Right. Yes. I was thinking a strong glaive who melts flesh to steel, but I also like a strong glaive who murders.
There's
I think one of the things that's holding that apart, or holding that separate, is that a lot of the things have stuff that comes from something else. Like, hedge magic is in the descriptor, and it's also in the type.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah, you can get it from multiple places. I think that's kind of cool.
I think part of my downfall was that I had an idea of the type of character I wanted to play, and I figured out how the system lets me play it. And I really ignored everything else. I didn't look at the list of stuff until, while we were sitting here tonight. And I'm like, there are a lot of really cool...
I think when you're running a game like this, like a game that's not necessarily meant to go for a super long time, that that sort of approach is perfect. For me, anyway, that's the sort of approach I would take every time. And then I would worry about it later, typically.
I really like its. I like how it comes stock with its own fantasy universe.
Normally I don't like that. I a lot of the time, I sort of rebel when something tells me how the game is supposed to be played, but I will admit that something about the Numenera ninth world, like, calls to me in this way that I think is really interesting. The way it's put together and the way that, the game mechanics and stuff like that work to, sort of drive this point home.
I used to do feel that same way about almost every game, but I've done almost a complete 180 on that.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot more.
If I'm going to get into a new game, it's almost always going to be because I want to play the system and the setting.
Yeah.
This setting is really nice.
I think that
it is. My own
that 180 came about when we started playing Mage Hot and Heavy, because I wanted to get that Mage setting just so right. And then about that same time, it was like there was just other stuff cropping up, like Pathfinder. We started playing like Kingmaker, and we were doing like real life Galarian shit. And and Jeff was doing his re-realms, and it was just kind of like campaign settings were cool for the first time in my experience, and I was really into it.
Yeah, and this game has a really good setting.
This one's particularly fun. It's like fantasy with technology and magic, but feels like it's all supposed to be there.
Yeah, they say in the quote in the very beginning of the book is the Arthur C. Clarke one, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, which is one of probably my favorite quotes in all of sci-fi anything. And like, I don't know, there's just something about this sort of setting where everything is a mystery, and there's so much that like nobody knows, and it's completely alien.
Well, and it's like they just put one word for all of it. This just covers all of it. It's magic, it's technology, it's mystery, and it's the artifacts.
I definitely don't begrudge Monty Cook the system or the game mechanics, but it was pretty clear to me before this was even published that it was mainly a platform for a new setting.
Right.
Yeah.
From the get-go.
Okay, so interesting thing to note for people who really like the setting and also really like RPG video games.
I know where you're going with
the Torment game is going to be Numenera.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. And I am so much more pumped for it. And that looks like really dark as shit. It's awesome.
Yeah, I really have no idea how it's going to actually turn out.
There's an entire little source material thing that Monty Cook wrote for how to make Numenera more Cthulhu-y, or specifically Cthulhu-y.
Oh, wow.
Cthulhu-style monsters and how to like tweak it towards horror and stuff.
That sounds
pretty sweet. Yeah, it sounds like it would be perfect because Numenera is so much about the unknown.
And you use the robot that cuts off heads, which definitely reminded me of Eclipse Phase.
Yeah.
There are robots that cut off heads in that. And I was just kind of thinking, like, you could go with, like, since it's the weirdo distant future thing, you could go with a very similar angle if you wanted to. Like, maybe a lot more of this technology from days past is hostile.
Yeah.
Maybe there's, like, a lot of nasty Numenera that you're just like, oh, I found this wonderful bauble, and then I also find a thing that sawed my arm off. So I guess...
I found a wonderful bauble that sawed my arm off.
I really liked the cipher idea. It reminds me of what we should be doing with Fate more, where it's like, you should be using them freely because you should also be gaining them freely, And since it's so much more, like, literally physical, like something that has a purpose, we should just use it. And then, like, it felt like every time we used one, guess what? There was another one, like, waiting to be picked up.
Were we talking about possibly recording a podcast about that?
No, I was going to say at the end that if Jeff has been recording all this, just cut it, like, splice it so that this is the podcast.
Yeah, no, I'm still recording. Okay, I wanted to bring up one thing. Is anyone else, like, I don't want to say completely off put. I had a lot of fun with this, and I could see this system. I could see myself liking this system a lot better than Fate. But the core mechanic, like, does not seem retarded to anyone else. Like, you have a number, you subtract from that number, and then you multiply it by 3, and then you try to roll over it. Like,
it sounds like they're trying to be different.
I think that they were trying to, I think the multiplying by 3 thing, like when I first saw it, I was like, now your difficulty is going to be this number. Now you're going to multiply that by 3 to get your target number. And I was like, why not start with the difficulty being the target number? Why not that? Maybe it adversely affects your word count to have to say this adds 3 or subtracts 3 from the difficulty every time. Maybe,
Yeah, it can be that it's easier to understand because you just subtract or add 1 for each thing that you do, and then when I first opened the book, I was laboring under the understanding that when you spent points for effort, you were reducing the target number. When I finally realized that they meant difficulty, and they meant that meant the target number went down by 3, I was like, okay, now I understand. These points are worth it. My only problem is when you're adding 1 to the die roll.
Yeah, which doesn't happen a huge amount.
What?
Sorry, it doesn't happen a lot.
I know, but that's one of the problems.
That's the reason.
Add
why
1. Oh, Jesus Christ! Was that an asset? Whoops.
The reason why it's good is, like, for instance, the whatever panache flourish attack thing is completely free. It's a +1 that comes from nowhere, and it helps your spread a little bit.
The more people it is, the better a bonus it is.
Did anybody else see the little table for task difficulty?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that the reason, like, it might be off-putting to us because we're so unfamiliar to it, Jeff, but do you think that maybe they designed it so that they could have a description for how difficult all tasks should be, and then you have to rise to that expectation?
What I'm saying is that role-playing games have been eschewing that sort of subtraction for a really long time now.
Are you saying that this is Thaco?
Yeah.
It's a little Thaco.
It's half Thaco.
It's like, let's go forward and backwards in the same...
It's actually a third Thaco.
Yeah.
It's really intuitive. I like that you're just rolling a die, just comparing that die roll to a number. What it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of steps ramping up in prep. You basically have your determine the difficulty, use your mental math powers to figure out what that means, and then spend points as necessary. And then sometimes you will add a point here or there. So, whatever.
I can tell you that from my angle, I think a lot of the reason that the way he does it, there's 2 things. First of all, I think Monty Cook is in love with the D20. He's never really made anything that's not for a D20. But second of all, it's because the chart goes so much higher than the D20. Okay. And having the extra numbers in between allows for a measure of granularity when something is not such a large step. Which is weird. And then as far as the subtraction and multiplication goes...
Yeah, I'm not talking about, just reduce everything by 3, because I understand, like, the rolling 17 through 20 is pretty cool. I did that a number of times this session. It was pretty fun.
Oh, yeah.
I
didn't get to learn much about that one.
Oh, yeah, you will someday. No, I get it, and there's, like, minor bonuses like panache. That actually makes the granularity of the system worth something.
Yeah.
But the subtraction, like, does it have to be, I don't know, difficulty 30? Or could it just be difficulty 90 and players get bonuses that they add, like every other game that exists? Like,
that's the thing, I think they're purposely trying to be different. I think he just wanted to really...
I had thought about that, like,
I honestly think he just doesn't want a D100. I agree with Lee. He probably wanted it simple for a lot of people to get.
Yeah, the thing is, though, is that the D100 is one of the 3 ways that you're supposed to roll in this game. It's D100, D6, and D20.
Yeah, but that's only really used to determine, like, stuff like that. And then a lot of the table you can do ahead of time.
Kicker, how do you get a D100? He says, roll 2 20-sided dice.
That is true, he does.
And it's like,
he's telling you how to He's telling you how to get it if all you did was buy 20-sided dice because he promised you that was all you had to do.
I'm just saying, if the difficulty was 12, if the difficulty was 4, and you have a specialty that reduces the difficulty to 9, the difficulty could, or to 3, the difficulty could instead just be 12, and you have a specialty that gives you +3 to the roll.
You know, I had thought about that exact way, and, I kind of, I guess I see your point.
Yeah.
I think that this is kind of a post-3rd edition way of thinking, where it's like,
or a
let's just do all of our math in the same direction. It all comes out in the wash. Let's just all commit to either adding or subtracting. Let's not do both, because that's Sacco. That's what Sacco was.
Yeah, and we know how much people love Sacco.
Is his problem that people are going to have to add double-digit numbers to a roll?
I'm pretty sure,
it's faster to subtract 2 numbers that are potentially eventually going to be double-digit numbers and then multiply them by 3 and then roll? Because I don't think that's faster.
Kind of is a little more like he wanted. I mean, this is pure speculation. This is me taking a journey through the mind of a man who I could not know less about. I guess I know a little about him. I've read Monty Cook's World of Darkness. Please don't yell at me. I feel like
loves a D20.
He wanted the task resolution to be you roll a D20, clean and clear. That number is your result.
Yeah.
That number tells you
the vast majority of the time.
You know what?
But
Here's
no
another thing
game can be that simple. That's the problem. There's a lot he wants to do here, so yeah, you're giving the illusion of simplicity, but this is... You're still doing a lot of work.
We also only played it as like low level with low level tasks, so it's easy to get the target difficulty and target number kind of mixed up, but I think when you start spreading it out to do like more difficult things where your target number is like really high and you know what I mean, like you start, because it's easier to confuse 3 and 3 or 3 and 6, when you're looking for something because the target number and the task difficulties numbers are so close together. But as the gap widens when you're playing a higher level campaign or like later on, then it becomes, I think, a lot easier to separate the two.
The other thing that sort of bothered me that I think kind of goes at the same thing where he's obsessed with, maybe not obsessed with, but he's got ingrained in his mind certain vintage or classic RPG ideals, and I'm maybe thinking of this in the lens of playing a decent amount of Fate lately, is I don't know why he bothered with levels. Why are we concerning ourselves with levels at this point? I know that mechanically they offer a certain feature to the game because it's built in, but it's just like, couldn't we just be accomplishing this with something different?
See, I kind of like it. Like, to me, if you wanted to get these kinds of, like, the kinds of powers and things that you have, like it gives you a certain amount of structure, but at the same time, it lets you get a little bit of the a la carte sort
I
of
like
style.
that, and that is something I think that is...
I realize I've been listening to
I don't
music
remember
for like an hour now.
if it's an actual rule or if it's just an optional rule or a tangent. In 13th Age, have any of you read that? I think we were talking about...
Just a little bit.
I feel like a super tiny bit. I hardly
Basically,
remember.
a thing where you level up piecemeal, like a certain... Like, every time... I think the way that... Maybe... It's either a house rule or the way it works in the book, but it's like... the way you level up is you basically get one of these features. They have a list, like, basically like attack bonus or saving throws or something. Each at the end of each session, until the GM decides it's time to level up, and then you get the rest of them. So it's like, it's essentially the way it works in this game, where you spend your XP on these things, and once you've got the whole set, then you level up. Which isn't a bad way to do it, I don't think. I think it offers you a little bit of that progress. But I also I'm kind of like...
See, when I read it, the first thing I thought of was was like, I thought it provides an interesting, like an interesting alternative to just a strict level.
Is my own hang-up, because as I am thinking about this, I'm pretty sure it's been like a million years since I've looked at or thought about a role-playing game that was not D20 or D&D related that had levels. I can't remember the last time I did.
Well, we've been doing a lot of Fate and Mage.
I like levels better than the advancement system for White Wolf and Fate, I would say.
I think the advancement system is one of the most interesting to me.
Well, both of those two, World of Darkness and Fate, you get a little bit more instant satisfaction, even if it's not like on a grand. Because it's like you can just like every time you do a session where you maybe get like one skill point or one whatever, then you can like spend it to upgrade something. It's just a little bit, but you are kind of like...
My problem with that is that I feel like when you get a little thing, it makes you hate getting those little things because you really want the big thing.
Well, no, I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
I know, but that's how I feel.
Because the flip side of that is the level up system where you really don't get anything for a while, and then it's like a little mid-year birthday or Christmas where it's like all of a sudden boom. Like, how did you go from being not so strong to strong, whereas with the other systems that we're talking about, you kind of do these little stepping stones up to where you want to be. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm just saying, you know, if you prefer one way.
I would be willing to. I think the idea that you're getting things, and then eventually when you get enough of them, your tier increases, that seems to me like a great model for advancement.
Yeah, right in the middle.
For a game where advancement is important.
I guess. I guess my issue with it is just like, there's a couple of things that your tier gets you. And I just sort of wonder why those things couldn't just be folded into the advancement scheme. Like, I don't know.
I think a lot of it has to do with you need like, in order to put these more powerful or higher cost abilities to use, you are better off not having those until you can support them.
Yeah.
Either by having higher stats or more effort or something like that, or more edge.
One of the things gives you 4 bonus points to spend around.
I thought the initiative system was really weird too, by the way. like that was the one thing that didn't...
It's the weirdest one to me.
It didn't translate well.
It doesn't matter how fast you are, you just...
Like
randomly go at some point.
Initiative, and all that was gonna give me was if I get to go before the bad guys or not, but did not give me whether or not I go before other people I know.
I was looking for how initiative works because it was I have training in initiative, so I guess I have to figure that out. And they had like a little sidebar that has a rule that says you want initiative to run more smoothly. If any player character beats the bad guys, you all go first. How about that? Just do it. Like,
yeah, it's like, but it's almost too simple because it's like if I'm trained but what if I was specialized in initiative and I roll a 7 and Evo with no training also rolls a 7? We get to go at the same time. But you know what I mean? I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah.
You know, like.
That's where
the initiative is the weirdest to me.
The ultimate of the system really. It really demands that you use it. You're basically just saying, all right, if you're trained, just add +3 to your number.
That's a weird question. What if 7?
Don't sweat it, bro.
What if 7 is not high enough to beat like the bad guys, but it is for me? You know what I mean? But it's just weird.
Yeah, right. No, exactly, and that's the thing is like is you just do it whichever way Lee says, and that's how it works. It's fine. I mean, basically, it's all going to come out in the wash. The bad guy's probably not going to kill you on the first turn.
Yeah, probably not.
I tried.
Unless he's the metal-armed guy and he throws a chair at you.
Okay, well,
God, man, that was my favorite move. Like, in my brain, I knew ahead of time like what I wanted that guy to be able to do. like he was the guy when I was thinking about I want something cool and I want to make it up, and this was one of my shower thoughts because I get a lot of those when I'm making up stuff. You know what I mean?
When you're masturbating.
Now this fight seems dirty to me somehow.
Anyway, and it was like I want him to be able to do cool stuff, and the object gravity, the linking two things together and then snapping gravity to them was the coolest idea I had.
Yeah.
And in my brain I was like, yes, who am I gonna hit with it? And I'm so glad it was Richard.
Well, that's fine. Did you guys like the idea that I didn't get to use with the Cypher Force Bomb? That would have been so awesome.
Still totally possible.
I'm totally gonna.
One day.
If ever in a room with a bunch of dudes, I'm gonna throw it in the middle of the room.
That would be even better if you were in a chase in some sort of a vehicle or fast-moving beast.
Yeah.
You just toss it down and it goes beep 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 zoop, and then go pop 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 dead.
I feel like the ciphers do items better than D&D has ever done items. They feel fun and cool, and they're not overpowered, but they're definitely powerful.
And they're creative.
They're just one use, and they're creative.
Yeah. And you're not supposed to hold on to them. You're supposed to be just popping them off.
And you're not supposed to sell them, and it was a lot of fun, and it avoided a lot of the pitfalls that magic items in D&D.
That first fight could have been a regular fight where we just keep throwing shit at it and shooting things at it. Instead, it was we'll slap this thing on it, and then Evo will mind control it. Boom. Problem solved.
Now we have a weird conversation.
And then we find another one,
dude,
right
that
afterwards.
That went so weird for me because I sort of backed myself into a weird corner because I committed before the game. I was I am not going to roll the ciphers ahead of time. I do not want to know what they are. I want to be as surprised as the players are because I think that'll be fun.
Oh yeah, I applaud that.
And the thing is that when that came up, when that fight came up, I suddenly realized that I do not entirely know what you guys are capable of because I had already forgotten because there were so many ciphers. So I was whenever I got to a fight, I'm what can they do to me? That's interesting to me. Without looking at their I can know what your numbers are and what your abilities are in general, but then there's this other weird thing that I'm whoa, what can they do?
When I said, does this machine count as a Numenera or whatever?
I had no idea why you were asking.
Okay.
I couldn't remember at all.
I was thinking he knows what I'm gonna do.
No, I had no idea.
But see, it allowed me to be instantly creative, almost like spending a fate point and making something happen.
Yeah, they mention in the book a couple times that ciphers are the Numenera that are the most important to PCs.
I don't know. I don't like that the most important items are single use because it's you finally find one that you really like and get along with, and it's already gone.
Yeah, but they're all good.
No, they're not all good.
Let's answer this. Actually, don't answer this if you can't. Is there some kind of rule that states when people are using ciphers that you should make more readily available? Because it felt like we would use one and boom, there was another one.
Ciphers are supposed to be common. Basically, the ninth world is saturated with old stuff. I'm pretty sure the reason you chose such a weirdly high number, the ninth world, it implies so many previous worlds. Well, I can hardly imagine.
The approximate timeline is 1 billion years in the future of Earth.
Yeah,
yep.
Something like that. And it's the world is steeped in this weird stuff.
Type of super technology you can imagine has come into being, and that civilization destroyed itself.
They even said that weapons and armor is kind of not the correct words because there's so many variations that they can't really be considered that when you get to a lot of them.
Imply that some of the ages between 1 and 9 didn't have humans in them, and somehow they're still humans or human-like people.
And it's to me, the cipher economy is it feels really it might seem like made up or gamed, but it feels really natural to me. I'm like, maybe there should just be a cipher here, so I throw in a cipher because I feel like it.
I would have I thought it was gotten into an economy sort of thing where, like, if we got to a place where there are people, I go to a market and I'm like, I don't have any ciphers left because I used both of mine in that encounter, and then I got a new one and I slapped it on my head right away. It's gone.
They're also supposed to be really dangerous. Like, that might be like a black market thing.
It's like it's even just like I have this dumb moon viewer. I cannot use this for adventures.
Oh, but that's not a cipher though.
That's an oddity.
That's my point. Is maybe if I take this dumb thing to a market, I could say, hey, I'll trade you this for that zip gun and that grappling hook thing that you have.
I think the idea
here that I can use, and you can take my stupid thing away.
Yeah, and that's totally possible. There are cities in the game where they do trade in Numenera.
That was my question about the oddities. While I think they're cool.
Yeah, they are cool. Yours are really cool.
When you're sitting around with them and you get a useless one, that's not just useless, but like not fun or anything. You just like sit with it, or are you forced to do something? To me, oddities seems like they might be boring once you get past a certain point in the game. Like they're fun for me now, but am I forced to just keep giving them away so they keep being fun for me?
I think part of it is that it's partly my job like the GM's job to make oddities interesting. Like they can,
Well, do they ever mean anything? I guess
they can.
Or is that a secret?
Like they can't. There's nothing in the rules that says that an oddity can't be more. Like,
okay.
The description for that hat was just exactly what the hat was. It's a hat with a feather that makes bird sounds. There was nothing else associated with it that did what it did. I had that happen because it seemed cool.
Well, if we decided to put an NPC in there that's like a bird aficionado, then you might be able to. That hat may find more worth than a normal.
Also, like there are artifacts in this game, and artifacts are the permanent.
Oh, and those seem like they're
that
super
knife
powerful.
was exceptionally powerful.
Yeah, I think, and they're supposed to be really strong, and also they're supposed to be mysterious. Like there's stuff that they don't. Who knows what they do?
I get that, but holding on to the oddities that do the same thing, which is nothing except for they're quirky, for a long time, is what I'm questioning about.
I think
you don't have to.
Though.
You could probably get rid of them if you want. I think that they're meant to be for role-playing fun.
Getting rid of them, and then it's fun for a little bit, and then you get rid of them, and then it's fun for a little bit, and then you get rid of them, and then you're eventually bored because it doesn't really do anything. That's what I'm worried about. It's not necessarily...
It sounds like a problem with either the GM or the player, and not necessarily with the oddities. Like, they can be used to be interesting, and if the players want to get rid of them and get new ones, or get rid of them and find new ones or whatever, that's like how much value the players put in them.
It's not necessarily that, though, because in D&D, all the new powers were fun until they stopped being fun anymore, and then you could swap them out with a different power or something, or you become a new character. 4th edition was these things kind of looked kind of fun, and then they just got kind of boring. I'm not saying that that's what oddities will be, or that switching them out won't be fun, but I'm saying that it could go in that way, regardless of the intention that they're meant for.
It could, and I think that it's largely up to the GM to keep those sorts of things interesting. To me, all Numenera has to be, like, all of them have to be interesting in some way. That's important.
I got the impression that oddities weren't supposed to be a huge part of the game. Like, it was just like this little quirky thing you got, and that it wasn't really supposed to be anything.
Yeah, and they're around sometimes.
So did I, and to me, that's what's kind of holding me, that's what's making me not disappointed, but making me think, if they're in here to be kind of quirky, but they don't ever do anything, is that just going to get boring and just be kind of disinterested?
See, you keep using the word ever. There's no ever with this. Like, there's nothing that says that an oddity can't be an artifact later, if you find a use for it, or if it becomes an important thing. There's nothing that says that hanging on to an oddity and hoping that you find a use for it is bad. And there's nothing that says that having an oddity and finding someone who wants it and using it for something else or giving it away or trading it is bad. Whatever you find a use for it. That's what's important. Or even if you find that it's funny, if an oddity is a one-off joke and people get enough enjoyment out of it, that's a good use of it immediately.
I mean, I understand what you're saying about things getting old, because I felt the same way about 4th edition. Like the fate mechanics. I can always find a way to do whatever I want, reroll, and do whatever I want. That was really cool, and it's getting old, like it's not a focus of the game.
It's hard
so if they
for
get
me.
old, I don't know if it matters.
It's hard for me.
That's what I'm wondering, if they're playing it as a focus or not. Sorry.
I was just going to say,
my character doesn't even have an oddity. So, like, I'm kind of like, while you guys are possibly going to get bored with yours one day, I'm like, well, I'm just a normal guy with machine parts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe you'll get a cool oddity, or maybe, there's something that someone won't want to carry around.
At least I obviously had the chance to wear a flashy, cool hat, but there was a character that it was more appropriate for.
And we got some good use out of that ridiculous hat.
Ed, you were going to say something.
A church lady to give it to. Who can wear it to church.
I find it very difficult to take a game that has a certain blend of narrative and game and try to ride it down the opposite path. Like, for instance, in Fate, I feel like Fate really comes alive when you're ignoring your character sheet and the mechanics and just doing what is right and what you feel. But in a game, it's just structured enough for me that I have to. It's an effort of will for me to not necessarily to do something that is contraindicated by my stats, which is a factor, but also just to come up with an interesting idea for what my character will do. Because when you kind of quantify who your character is as a person in game stats, you sort of feel like you should be walking down those paths, basically supporting your aspects or denying your negatively themed aspects. And it's a tad of that in this game. I mean, we've only played the one session so far, so I can't really say, but it's like, I feel like all this argument we're having about oddities is basically saying that, oddities are not supported by game stats. They don't really do anything. And so you have to cruise down that narrative pathway to say, well, you have really comfortable pants that cool your butt. So, hey, maybe you could camp out in the hot zone and it wouldn't give you any ill effects. But then you're saying, well, I guess it would give ill effects to the people whose nads aren't in the cooler. But you're basically just saying, you're kind of on those fringes of, game data and narrative data. And it's sure, I have this little moon viewer, and it's not going to be of any use unless there's something germane to our adventures on or in front of the moon. If we go to the moon, or if we find a civilization on the moon, maybe this becomes the most powerful artifact in the game. But until then, it does not do any good to us.
No,
when we're trying to fight bandits in this.
It's just
crater.
meant to be something to be mentioned, like when you go into wherever you're getting ready to go to bed, and Lee says, and you pull out your moon viewer and you lay it next to your head.
I'm saying that while it is fun, and while I do make an effort to do those sorts of things, like the tweeting hat, it was the thing where it's now all of a sudden my character really likes the sound of birds around his head at all times because I wanted to wear that hat so bad. But it's every time I do it, it is an effort of will, even though it's not a very strong one. It's just I'm doing it because I feel I should, not because it comes naturally to me, and not because I want to.
I think it's supposed to basically.
I mean, I do eventually want to.
Of the game, that it's not all serious, and
I don't.
I think part of the thing about oddities, really, to me, is that they're there to a lot of it is to reinforce the feel that Numenera is so it's very mysterious to the point that there are things in the past that have happened that are so alien and impossible to understand, and the oddities are complete. They have so little to do with the power of the characters. You know, it's like if an oddity, there are oddities that have game effects. There's no denying that, but they could be. They're so limited in comparison to the actual use of like an artifact or a cipher.
The detritus of eons is beyond comprehension. It is random. If you look at things that people were really, really into a decade ago, you will find things that are less than useless today, a lot of them. Over the course of many millions of years, these things, some of which will stand the test of time, will show their heads, and it will be nonsense. I agree that it reinforces that the Numenera are random. I think that I would be more comfortable with the oddities if it wasn't so obvious that you found one. Oh, I found a useless quirky item.
Right.
I think it would be more fun if there was ones that skirted uselessness a little bit more ambitiously.
Right. They can't all be pogs and slinkies.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, like, you basically...
There are some that
every
do
once
that.
in a while there's a talk boy, and that can be used for something.
And I
You
think
see, this is one thing. There's like there are some in the list. Like, and the list is like I'm looking over a list of about 150. And there are some in the list that like they skirt that usefulness.
Alright, so game mechanics-wise, oddities and artifacts have their separations. In-game, like setting-wise, the only real difference between those is that an artifact is immediately or obviously useful or powerful.
Yeah.
That's it, really?
That's the biggest thing, really, yeah.
The oddities you'd have to be kind of creative with to get that. Like I could see the hat making chirp noises as a distraction being a thing. I could see the cold pants being a thing. I could see trading a thing that gives somebody better breath to like a troll or something, a thing. You know what I mean? You just have to think outside of the box.
If you want to think way outside the box, there's a Tier 6 nano ability that lets you teleport yourself and people you're touching to a different planet.
I want the first of all, I
You
want
have to know it
the one
exists.
where you're sometimes not phased into this reality. I think that one's funny
I
for the focus. But back to okay.
don't know. I mean, but the bazooka was so good. It's such a good item.
Well, that was a cipher, though.
I know. I know the difference between ciphers and oddities. I'm crafting. I'm perfect.
Okay, I didn't know we segued from oddities to ciphers.
I'm not saying that, like, you're saying, like, well, if you put a lot of elbow grease into it and really think about it and you're in just the right circumstances, those oddities are going to be really useful. You know what's really useful? Shooting somebody for 8 damage with a rocket that never misses.
Right. There is no
So
limit.
true.
Unless I'm wrong, is there a limit to oddities? Because there's only a limit to ciphers because they are dangerous. But oddities, I'll wear the pants, the hat, and the mask. You know what I
Oddities
mean?
don't have dangerous radiation because they're not useful.
Exactly.
Yeah,
The radiation is
I
a
think that
function of usefulness.
I think oddities as a game mechanic tool is a weird discussion in the first place because they're meant to be a largely narrative tool.
Okay, well, here's a different tack, too. Are there any oddities that are one-time use oddities, or are they all pretty much just constant?
They're pretty much
Might be like a
constant.
firework or something.
I think that it is a little bit of a breach of the thing where you willful suspension of disbelief. That ciphers, the good items, are almost all single use. Oddities, the crummy items, are almost all constant. I think that adds kind of a contrast that doesn't really make a lot of sense in the context of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, some of those crummy items are... If all of the good items burn out, then why don't some of the crummy items burn out?
Well, not all of them.
Some
do.
of the crummy items do burn out for what it's worth.
Even you can speak that draconic language or whatever.
But technically, the item is used up.
I don't expect much out of oddities, and I guess my reaction is that I already do expect them to get old, and that never bothered me, because they're not important. But that does make you question, like, aside from the first session, what's the point? But
one of the other things is trying to make an oddity into something that is just supposed to be quirky. It's like, do I want to sit on these things hoping that something is going to be important for them, or do I use them when the time is right? Do I sit and wait and hope that it becomes an item? Like, is that supposed to try to do something with the moon thing, or is he just supposed to pawn it off? And Lee's cool idea is something.
I think you shouldn't even have to hold on to an oddity if you don't feel like it. I mean,
I'm not saying that I don't feel like it. I'm just saying, like, if
after character creations, your character does not determine how many oddities you generally have, right?
Yeah,
true.
So you can just hold on to them forever.
So it doesn't matter. Like, it's not like he's gonna ditch an oddity to try to get a different one.
I think that oddities are the least of all things to be concerned with.
Yeah, it really is. I think we've spent a lot of time on these.
If you just acknowledge that there's this feature that you get from your type that Glaives don't get because Jacks and Nanos are special, that doesn't technically do anything. It's like, I'm trying to think of an example that it is like. It's like the thing where barbarians used to not be able to read. It didn't really have an effect. I mean, it had an effect, but it didn't have an effect unless you were trying to multi-class a wizard, and then you were doing it wrong. You had to learn to read before you could get that spellbook. But, like...
I always thought that was hilarious.
I guess I'm just trying to... I don't know.
I think it's.
I'm not too worried about applying mechanics to the oddities.
There were worlds before this world, and they're there. This stuff is there.
Yeah, they're largely for flavor.
I'm not concerned about any of this.
Limited role-playing situations that are interesting, and that's all. And I think that's fine.
Yes, I'm just saying that so far I'm liking the way the system plays, but I can feel a certain skepticism in my heart about the longevity and replayability that it will have.
Yeah. Are you saying that you like the way the game is, but there are some things that are just a little too
I'm much more attached to the game world than I am to the system. And even that, I'm kind of like... I feel like he was going for an aesthetic that I'm not super psyched about, but I like the theme.
I feel like the aesthetic was directly aimed towards me.
All the weapons are like double-ended blue glowing canoe paddles, or like blue glowing Wolverine claws. All the weapons are blue and glowing in the illustrations, and I'm just like, I guess that's cool, but like, unless my character sheet says my weapon is blue and glowing for some reason, like if it's made out of special super steel or whatever they call the thing that makes your weapon so strong, it doesn't really. I'm not comfortable saying like, well, when my weapon's a lightsaber, it just doesn't function as one. I did a little of that. I was just like, well, I look like a freak, but I'm kind of a normal guy.
I imagined that a spear that I'm using to thrust at somebody was really cool, futuristic looking, but I kept falling backwards when I would describe what I'm doing next, and like I'm gonna throw this spear, and here I am like in hundreds of years ago, like on the African plains, you know what I mean, or like just something like that kind of spear. I don't know why I kept thinking these are the spears that I'm using, but then when we would do something like, oh, we're going to fight this metal thing, I was like, well, there's no way a wooden spear would work in this situation. I don't know, I couldn't place exactly what my weapons looked like,
One of the things they were talking about is a lot of that stuff, you can find things that aren't necessarily rare, like rare silks or something like that, but to me, it seems like most of the things are built by something that was around before guns, and it's like you just get... They say that most things are made out of like iron and steel, and that's it, and most things are wood, but it's not necessarily uncommon to find some sort of super silk or blah 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 that makes your stuff more interesting. To me, I had the assumption that everything I was making was iron and steel and made from bone, and I used normal wood because I was a woodworker and that's all I had, and I hadn't found anything else that would determine that.
I kept kind of running into this confusion where I'm like, so wait, are these spears that I'm throwing wood, or are they the cool beam spears that everybody has in these pictures? Because those are cool too.
Yeah. I've been assuming that everything that you have is regular.
Here's the thing, though. I really like that. I like that you can get along with none of this music or anything. It's like I said, science fantasy. You can make normal houses, blah blah blah, but someone might have a music player, or someone might have a beam saber that people have not seen within 500 miles or something like that. But you get it because you're an adventurer. And that's the one rare thing. But I like that. That's one of the things I like about the world.
I
really do
I think
enjoy
really cool.
the whole world. And I like how it's put together.
And in some places,
the system itself is kind of just weird to me. A lot of it just doesn't seem like it meshes.
I'm in the same boat as you guys too. The setting, I like it. I like the integration of setting elements into the game, but the system itself is concerning in areas.
I think the only thing that concerns me about the system particularly is is, as much as it hurts to say it, the resolution mechanic, which is, of course, the most important thing you roll in the system. The rest of it fits together in a way that is very, very pleasing to me.
The 3 splats that very specifically define your character with very little choice, I think could be a problem for the longevity of the game.
I guess one thing
I agree because they reuse a lot of it.
One thing I rather liked was that the Jack is really portrayed as the rogue. I really kind of think that depending on the choices you make with the Jack abilities and the focus, you really can cleave a lot closer to a fighter or a nano or a little of both than just be like this third prong of some kind of rogue. I think they did a good job of that. That felt very refreshing to me to look at, where it was just like, yeah, there are only 3 splats basically, but it's kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
One of them took me in a different direction than I was expecting.
Well, even the glaive, I thought was going to be just straightforward, but it was there was actually interesting options in there where, depending on what you picked as your fighting skills, you could have been like more of a tank, or you could have been more of like a speed character, or more of like a heavy hitter character. You know, like later on, there's options to be able to dual wield or to be like more of a martial artist, and it like puts you on the branch of like barbarian, paladin, monk, you know, and like ranger. You know, because also like the ranged fighter is part of glaive as well. So I thought that was kind of interesting because at first I'm like, so it's basically like fighter, thief, mage, but it really spreads out.
The advancement looks way more interesting than 4th edition, which is the primary system. I would also shake a finger at the getting bored of the classes.
Right.
Yeah. But the tiers, like, they look really cool. It's not like I might trade out an ability or just keep the same one from level 1 forever.
I don't know how the other 2 work, but I do really like Jack. To me, they make it like, I'm playing a character who is, I have like almost even stats, like 13, 12, 13, and I splash between everything, and I feel like I do it okay enough that it doesn't suck. You know?
Yeah.
And I like that.
I really wanted to play like a fighter, but I wanted to definitely be more kind of like a swashbuckling, no armor wearing kind of
you want to be like
guy.
Debonair.
And I didn't, and I even even though I think I could have made the exact same character as a glaive and he would have played just fine, I got a little
You're
serious
welcome.
on them. I just got I just had that. I just wanted that.
Wanted to splash that song in there.
Wanted
A little bit more.
Jack thing.
I don't know what we're using for the.
Well, Jeff, what were the other kinds of? What was the broad stroke name of your class per se?
Nano.
Nano. What were the types of nanos?
What do you mean?
Was there more than? I mean, there had to be. It had to have branched off the same way.
Nanos who were like you can be blasty, you can be illusiony.
Okay.
There's a lot of weird stuff you can do like that. You can be kind of
I think
defensive.
he's talking about the 3 different types of
And
nano.
I think it's worth noting that those types don't do anything.
Yeah,
They
the
don't do
background
anything
thing
at all.
stuff.
They're
Oh.
But they're kind of
they're cool.
They're
Yeah.
cool, but they don't really do anything.
There's like knowledge, seeker, psionic, and something else.
If
Well,
you had
yeah,
asked
I can-
to me, I would have said I was born lucky as a Jack. I didn't really think of myself that way, but it was the only one that really fit.
Yeah, I didn't really put too much stock into those to the
Yeah,
point that when somebody asked me about it, I had forgotten they were there.
And that's the other thing. Is
put any
maybe
stock
they don't
into it.
matter.
Either until Richard mentioned that he was a bio-augmented half cyborg man, and I was like, that was awesome.
First of all, I loved that because it gave me, like Lee says he likes to work in a box, it gave me, like, rails to be on, like, oh, clearly this is how my character's going to be. But I was actually talking about when I made my character, when I could choose, like, what my combat abilities were. I picked, like, thrust and pierce, but there was, like, one for armor and there was one for this that clearly would have made my class a certain archetype, like a tank or like a ranger, if I followed those in the different tiers. What were things that Jeff could pick as a nano? Could he have been basically the archetype of a cleric, a mage,
You
a
basically
bard?
picked different spells. There was a spell for like pushing things. There's another spell, I don't remember what it is.
I think if you want to be a cleric, the best way to go about that is the focus of Works Miracles. I'm pretty sure
Yeah, it's really the only healing thing in the game. You can use skills to heal people, though.
If it felt like that too, like when you go to tier 2 and you go to pick new stuff, can you focus into like being like a supporty, like I give people buffs, or could you like go straight offense mage? Like what would stop 2 nanos from being exactly the same? You know?
A lot of that would be on their focus.
Mostly the focus.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
also, like, when you get up to higher tiers, the other things that'll separate you is, like, when you get the option to, like, when you advance, you have to buy a skill. That skill you can instead buy a class ability, type ability that is. And that's one of the things that'll, like, separate them, or how much they are, like, you can be a strong nano who murders. There's nothing wrong with that. You can be, but, like, you can, in the various places that you decide to spend your skills, or your stat points, or your edges even, that'll separate you a lot. But also, I think the nanos have a decent variety of esoteries in the various levels, such that when you hit another tier and you get one of those abilities, or you get 2 of those abilities, or I think it's 1. But like when you hit another tier and you get those, like you could just very well choose one that another nano doesn't have.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I'm looking at them now, and it's like as you get to different tiers, you can start to you can either continue to do like different types of attacks, or you can start doing other things. Like one here is like a shield. There's another one that gives people regeneration. So that would be like if you're going for like a healer style, you would get things like that can like assist in combat with. You're not actually hurting your opponents. You're just helping your friends. If you wanted to be that style, because I guess you pick whatever spells. One of them, like some of these work really good against machines. Some of them work better against people. So depending on what kind of mage you wanted to be, is I guess what I was trying to figure out. But I just had to scroll down to figure it out for myself.
At 4th tier, you get a spell that kills people.
So?
Slay.
If the target is an NPC or creature level 3 or lower, it dies.
Oh.
Yeah, so like if you wanted to be straight up offense mage, then that might be something you have to grab. There's also a mind control in 4th tier.
If the target is a PC, they move down 1 step on the damage track. I have no idea what that means.
Okay, so the way the damage track is,
hail to
like,
from
as long as all of your stats are above 0, then you are hail, which means you have no penalties to your stuff. If any one of your damage tracks is at 0, you are, and the others are above 0, you are, I don't remember what it's called.
Like impaired and then
impaired.
Disabled or just
debilitated.
Debilitated.
Impaired means that you are, like, all of your actions are +1, +1 step of difficulty.
Oh, okay.
Debilitated is like +2 and other stuff, and when all of your damage tracks are 0, you're dead. When you take damage, you subtract it from might first, and then speed, and then intellect, unless something is attacking your intellect first, yada yada.
If you're a player character, you have to use it on somebody 3 times in order to kill them.
Oh, Lee, what happens if somebody, say you have like maxed out might and speed still, but somebody does something that like wipes out your mind? Does it still make you impaired?
Sure does.
Okay, it just whatever you run out of first will put you in that part of the chart.
Hey, you got brain blasted, brah.
It's probably. I'm not sure that this is true. I want to say it's harder to drain someone's speed aggressively than it is to drain their intellect.
I'm sure there's a spell for it or something else.
The only thing I can think of that I've seen that specifically does damage to people's speed is like poisons. Typically do damage to like speed or might. But also like maybe if something was using like a shock attack or something like that, it might do damage to their speed.
Mm-hmm. Like a paralysis style?
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, it's not common. Usually you get damage to somebody's speed by going through their might first. I think I actually kind of like that. And part of the thing that's interesting about me is I'm like, oh my god, you guys have these huge, massive pools of stuff, and these enemies have a bunch of armor and they're difficult to hit. But at the same time, you guys go through your massive pools of stuff by making it possible to hit enemies, and I think that's really wild.
But did they also have massive pools?
No, they have like the strongest enemy had 14 hit health, and you just do damage to it like regular.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a lot of my concerns about the system are just either semantics, where I'm like, why did you do that? But like the actual in-play, it does feel pretty good. And it does link up with the world very well, which basically makes it accomplish what it needs to do.
What originally drew me to playing this was that someone on Reddit said almost exactly that. They were like, my friend got it because he kickstarted it, and we resisted playing it with him for a long time because we said it looked stupid. And then when we played it, it was really fun. And the way he said it was like, it was one of the most fun role-playing experiences I've had in a long time, and it felt fresh. And I was like, fresh? That's what I want to hear.
Yeah, I guess
I want to run a thing for my friends that I've never played before. And
I don't think that I'm going to be relying on this as my go-to game or game system, but I really do think it hits the spot in a big way, at least like.
Yeah, like it scratches the hipster itch.
Well, it was so approachable. I think that was the big thing. Like, I like this thing where we do, like a game, like a one shot when some people are available and not everybody, and it makes it so that we don't, just have to sit around and wish we were gaming instead. But it's like, all of the games I really want to try to play have kind of a barrier to entry, where it's like, do we have time to? We don't have time to learn how to play it, much less to play it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really want to try the new Shadowrun. I don't know very much about it. I mean, I know a lot about it now, but I don't have a lot of experience with it, is what I mean. And so it's like, it is ponderous. It is a very detail-oriented system. It would be uncomfortable. I think, to do a one-shot of it. I mean, I believe you guys have.
Yeah, I was going to say yes and no, because...
We did with you.
No, he wasn't there.
I wasn't there.
It was Rory ran. We did a thing with you also, but we had sort of intended to play this for a longer time.
It was
Also,
pre-gen
Well,
characters.
that was a while ago.
Pre-gen characters make one-shots a lot easier.
Yeah, you're probably right.
That is true. This game did feel really easy to whip up, though. I mean, if there's one thing I gotta hand it to...
Oh, I made like this character incredibly fast.
This game...
Like I had an idea and I'm like, blah,
I
blah,
had
blah,
to
blah.
read for about 15 minutes before I knew that I would be able to make my character in less than an hour before the game started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, I understand where you're coming from with this. It's all lists. The mechanics are just a couple of pools, and then I consult these lists, and I've got it.
I read the mechanics like a few days ago, and then I never gave it the time of day until about an hour and a half before we started, and I messaged Lee and I said, do I have enough time to make a character? I'm pretty sure I fucked myself. And he's like, no, you'll be fine. And I went and did it, and it was like, my character was written out before we even started.
There are a couple of, there's just a couple of other games that I just want to try so bad that are just
I want to play Shadowrun.
worse than Shadowrun.
There's a lot of pre-gen characters out there for stuff, though.
Yeah, and we can do that.
I can gen characters if I'm going to run a one-shot of something. That's not a problem. Making characters is the easy/fun part, I think. Of a lot of those games. I guess Shadowrun is not really that easy.
We should try to make characters together for Shadowrun sometime, because anybody... I remember I was telling you guys this before. Anybody can run anything with Shadowrun characters because they just get picked up on all these different runs constantly. And then when Rory goes to start his game, if we like the character we made, we just play it. Because they just, happen to be on the West Coast, and boom, we're going to do something.
That's not a terrible idea, as ideas go. Not to change the subject, but is there any prospects for gaming next weekend? I'm not sure if I'm busy. I don't think I am.
I'm not.
I won't be able to run next weekend, but I want to run the 10th. I don't know if you guys are busy or not. I might be able to run next weekend, but I don't know because I have to do some other shit tomorrow.
I'll tell you guys what, I am looking forward to Monday because we were really ramping up for a climax to Lee's story arc that he's running right now.
Yeah, and I am excited to get that.
But I think Rory's going. Oh, maybe not.
I don't know. You see, I think this is weird to say. I don't know if I could see anyone else but me running an extended game in Numenera. But at the same time, like I have a fairly immense amount of enthusiasm for this world, and for the game, because I actually think like when I originally read it, I'm like, I bet this would be really fun to play. And then when we were playing it, I'm like, yeah, that is really fun to play. And I mean, I like running it.
If Rory is gone on Monday, do you want to play 3 more hours of Numenera?
Yes, I desperately do.
I'd really like that.
I have like a million ideas for this thing.
Well, I mean, we have to go to that island and that hot spring, and maybe.
Yeah, and there's also a whole city in the north that's made up of those robot dudes. And
I will say this: I will play my character again, but if we keep doing it, I want to know when you figure that out. I can remake my character or redo it, and hopefully.
I will say that the place that you are now, Narragansett is pretty encapsulated. It pretty much, I felt when I was making it that I had about enough for 2 good sessions, without worrying about anything else. Granted, I could make more stuff. I was excited enough about this setting and this thing that I came up with most of that stuff in like a day and a half. I cranked it because I literally could not stop. To the point that I had too much. I could, like, if we wanted to, or if I needed to, run a game on a, when I'm not running a different game, or just as a filler game, like, I could run this all day.